Let me tell you something. You're familiar with Daryl Davis.
I'm not.
Daryl Davis is the black blues musician who de-radicalized over 200 Klansmen.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Amazing dude. His story's incredible. I did an event where he was speaking. They threatened to burn the theater down. We do an after event, and he decides to go across the street to the Antifa protesters and talk to them. And they called him a Nazi and a white supremacist and refused. And this Facebook posting, I've never experienced this.
But fossils encourage people to believe in creationism. So the point is, for them, I talk about this in my book as well. For them, black is a spiritual state. That's why Bill Clinton is the first black president and Clarence Thomas is not black. You laugh, but it has an internal logic to it.
I know.
In the same way for Catholics, right? The Eucharist, the wafer, literally becomes Christ's bones, and the wine literally becomes his blood. I think that's the Catholics who do that. Literally, you are no longer black, and literally, you are black if you are saved from the sin of racism. And once you realize that's how they look at things, everything else makes much more sense.
I find it hilarious when I've white people attack black people calling racial slurs and these anti-protesters.
I don't think it's funny at all.
Well, I don't mean funny, haha. I mean funny as in unusual and like unnerving.
You know what it is? I've done so much work with like North Korea and the former Soviet Union and how these totalitarian ideologies work that when I see even the slightest bit of it, it really makes me recoil, and it's just like this gets very bad very quickly, and I don't find it cute at all. Like I get why you do, I just personally don't.
I'm not, but I am on the verge of laughing because you're wearing this hat, with the helicopter on it, and you're talking about the Soviet Union, North Koreans, Gulag, kind of stuff.
The helicopters solve that problem in Chile.
That's true. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Are you at all concerned this undermines? Or actually, maybe it helps.
No, this is very good because it alienates people who can only see things visually and viscerally, and those are not the people I want on my side. I want people who are able to hear ideas and think critically. So this is actually a good filtering device for alienating people I wouldn't want to be able to be engaged with.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Perfect.
The crazy thing about the Daryl Davis circumstance was that he could walk up to a Klansman, and they'd be like, "Whoa," and he'd be like, "How's it going?" And they'd be like, "Hi," and they'd talk. He couldn't do that with these far leftists.
But the Klansman is ignorant, and had been taught a bunch of ideas, which is based on it's very hard to be racist or homophobic or anti-Semitic or any of these other things if you know people from that group.
Right.
One of the best ways that gay rights got over was what I call like the ambassador program, because as more and more gay people came out and you were like, blah, 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 they're coming after kids, you're like, that's my uncle. Like he loves my nephew. And that is personal. Like this happened a lot, with Europe, the Jews. It's like that's my lawyer, whatever. It's like he's not, maybe I don't. You could say certain bad things about him. The fact that he's evil, I'm not hearing this, not even for a second. That is so for the Klan. There's some people who it gives them status, who are low status men, and now they're okay. They have a cause, and let me just finish quickly. They meet the guy. He's like, this guy's a cool dude. This isn't a fundamentalist faith. It is a very different paradigm, in my opinion.
I was going to say that's exactly what Daryl said.
Okay.
That when he would talk to these Klansmen and they would hang out, later when these guys were at the meetings and they would say these things about black people, he'd go, that's not at all like Daryl. Daryl doesn't act that way.
As long as you have one, your entire narrative falls apart.
Yeah. But then in terms of the fundamentalist faith, I guess the shield is don't ever talk or listen to anybody.
Of course, because that's Satan in the apple. Right. Because they're going to tempt you into faith, into sin. They're sending temptation to make you fall away. You need to stay with us and remain pure, whereas that is the impurity, and that's the slippery slope. One day you're listening to Ben Shapiro, the next day you know Mein Kampf inside and out, as the New York Times told us. But they're told this with a straight face. Hold on, by a reputable New York reputation. No one's going to deny the New York Times' great reputation. And if the New York Times is telling me on A1 that if I'm reading Ben Shapiro on Monday, I'm going to be full getting swastika tattoos on Saturday, are you saying the New York Times doesn't know what it's talking about?
You call
Mr. Propellerhead.
You refer to the media as the cathedral. Is that
the cathedral is broader than the media. The cathedral is the universities, the media and entertainment, and the government. Yes.
And so this is like the leftist SAW fundamentalists.
It's a progressive faith that has its roots in the social gospel of Woodrow Wilson and even a little earlier. Yes, and this has been the governing. As I talk in my book, People think America is a secular society. America is a more religious society than ever. Just because a religion doesn't have a monotheist central God, Buddhism doesn't have that.
Right.
That does not make it any less of a faith. They have their rituals. They have their televangelists who tell them what to think. Rachel Maddow, John Oliver, and this is literally a religion. They go on their Facebook and spread that day's sermon to all their congregants. And you're coming into their church and telling, hold on a minute, like, this is church. Sit down and shut up. We know what we're told, because you're going to tell me that this man of the cloth is wrong or this lesbian of the cloth is wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm offended that you would dare come in here and try to spit your sin in my house of purity.
I think it's Peter Boghossian who refers to it as a non-theistic religion.
Yes, it is absolutely a fundamentalist evangelical faith.
I was having a conversation with a prominent online lefty a few years ago, and I was explaining that I view these people as a cult. And then I said, we had a discussion about it, and there's like these rules of culthood.
Sure.
And having like a figure is...
Yeah.
So I was like, so maybe it's more of a religion.
Yes.
This individual, disagreed with me. A couple years later, they came back and said everything they experienced with religion was very, very similar to what they're experiencing now, it's freaking them out.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the other thing I want people to appreciate. This is something I have enormous disdain for conservatives are. Do not take people and give them your children to raise 5 days a week, they're training their children to hate you.
Yep.
Socialists regard your property as their property, but even more nefariously, they regard your children as their property. You see, they're getting resentful that there might be cameras in these classrooms, and it is a very sick. And this has been by design. They talk about making good citizens. Making good citizens is a euphemism for breaking young minds and making them submissive and obedient, and to have their self-esteem come from an external source, namely that mediocre man or woman at the front of the room who your approval is based on whether they give you a grade, and it's based on whether they like you or not, more often than not. It is a horrible Prussian evil system that's been going on for 100 years, and that is something that really needs to be the next front line among people who care about their kids. Now, I'm just going to say one more thing. A lot of people don't have the option to go to private school, of course. That's where the fight needs to happen. That money has to follow the kid. There need to be more choices for poor people.
I was going to ask you about school choice.
I'm for school abolition. I say I have said.
I agree.
I have said many times, public schools are literal prisons for children, and the only place many people will ever encounter violence in their lifetimes. And we're told, this is a really sick one, it's good that you're bullied because it prepares you for real life. There is nowhere in real life where you are trapped for years with someone who is engaged in psychological warfare or physical warfare against you, other than perhaps an extremely abusive marriage. And in that case, there are many venues to help you escape it and transition to a healthy life. Whereas here, there's every chance to close the door and make sure you do not escape. It is depraved.
And what if the bully's your teacher?
Well, no, I've said this also. The teachers are the bullies. The teacher's job is to break your spirit and make you submissive and obedient. Here's some things that happen.
Some good teachers.
I'm sure you do have some. Here are some things that are we just take for granted that you think about. You're like, why is it that everyone has to learn in the same way? Why is it that everyone has to be on the same timetable? Because it prepares you for life in corporate America, where everyone just checks in at 9 o'clock, which makes no sense when you're self-employed. Why is it that everyone has to learn the same things at the same rate? None of these things make sense in a contemporary context, but we still do them.
I agree. Abolish school.
Yes, abolish public and the government monopoly on schools.
I was homeschooled before kindergarten.
Okay.
As long as I can literally remember and fathom a thought, my mom was homeschooling me and my siblings.
That's wonderful.
When I started school, I was just far ahead.
Because you basically had a tutor who loved you. This is like the ideal scenario.
So it's really funny. When I was in first grade, there was a math game called Around the World.
Oh, yeah.
Where, are you familiar with the game? You stand up, then you stand behind the next desk, and the teacher gives you a flashcard. Whoever answers first gets to move to the next desk. If you're standing and you get it wrong, you sit down in their seat.
Yeah.
I'd never lose, and neither would my brother. And so it got to a point where they would ask us not to play it, because no one was faster than us at solving these simple, mathematical equations, like just basic addition, multiplication, division. I ended up being just like the best, like straight A's across the board. And then I remember when I left Catholic school, went to public school, all of a sudden it was very different. Now, I think the problem I had with Catholic school, and I'm grateful for my experience, was that the Catholic school was so uptight. Everybody walked around with sticks up their butts.
Yeah.
Like kids would cry if they stubbed their toe. It was like ridiculously weak. The public school was the exact opposite. It was chaos. Like these kids were doing nasty stuff. Just, there was gang activity and things like that. And so I got to experience a little bit of both. But my parents had actively been teaching me before, during, and after. When I left, the reason I went to high school for about 2 months, I think, or a few months. I left partly because I was lied to every step of the way.
Yeah.
In 8th grade, they're like, look, I know you're upset and unhappy here, and you're being held back because you're smarter and everybody and all that stuff. Grade-wise, not like, I was a genius at 8 years old, 12 years old. But then they said, when you go to high school, there's going to be, everything's going to be different. You're going to learn the truth about all of this, stuff, about history. They're going to get more in depth. And then I got there and it was the exact same garbage.
Yep.
And so I was like, I'm not going. And I went from straight A's to straight F's.
Yeah.
And that's when my parents freaked out and they're like, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
And then I went back to homeschooling. And so
You're very lucky.
we did this correspondence program I never finished. I never got my diploma, never got a GED. And I had this very easy realization when I was young. The concept of wealth transfer, and value is simple. The person sitting in front of me is holding a green piece of paper. How do I convince them to let me hold that green piece of paper? Everything else was irrelevant in terms of all these stupid arguments. It was simply a discussion of, hello, good sir, may I have that dollar?
Yeah.
And then they might say yes. And I was like, wow. And now I have money. I can do whatever I want with it. And that's how you start a business. And that's the fundamental aspect of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
But look, my family were entrepreneurs. My dad ran side businesses. He was a firefighter. My mom was tutoring and things like that. My grandpa had his own business. And so I was very lucky in that regard. And having a mom who she tutored me. I watched my friends go to college. They get indoctrinated.
It's horrifying.
They believe all these fanciful lies. You're going to go to college. You're going to get $50,000 in debt, but you'll be making $100,000 a year when you graduate.
Yeah.
And then they go work at Starbucks.
Yes.
I remember when I was, I think I was like 16 or 17. My dad did want me to go to college. And I started reading this economist who wrote an article saying, if you go to any investor and say, for $40,000, in 4 years, you'll be $40,000 in debt plus interest, they'll laugh in your face.
Of course, yeah.
That's not even a real proposition. Yet we do this to all of these college students all day. So I learned something really interesting later on in life when I was probably around like 25 or 26. So this is when I started covering, I was on the ground covering Occupy Wall Street. I had a rising profile. I had, offers for work and stuff, but I was kind of doing my thing. And I had a friend who told me a story about he tried hiring people for his job. He initially hired college students, but found they were incapable of doing this kind of work because they struggled and always needed direction, could never solve a problem on their own. He went through a few rounds of these employees not understanding what was wrong. And then finally, when he was broke and he said, I can't afford these kids anymore, I'll just hire someone hourly, problem solved. And the people he had hired for hourly moved to California to become actors. And what he said was, I think these kids, they dropped out of high school. They made a decision for themselves. I need to go here to accomplish my goals. Whereas these other college kids were only people who had ever done what they were told to do.
Oh, yeah. Of course, because now they've been initiated into this. It's a caste system. I think it's been demonstrated. I don't have the study in front of me, obviously, that by far the biggest divide in America isn't between race; it's between college graduates and non-college graduates. And historically, it's been like, okay, now this is kind of your entree into a certain stratus of society. Thankfully, people like you and many others are demonstrating that this is a relic of history. It's very hard to teach people, although it's increasingly easy, that it used to be the American dream, the GI Bill, right? No one in my family ever went to college. My daughter's going to college. My son's going to college. This was a major accomplishment. This is objective proof that our family is getting better, that our kids have it better than us. So it's very hard to knock that idea of these people's heads and be like, you're paying a lot of money for your beautiful teenage daughter to go away and to come back as a swamp walrus with unnatural hair,
Yep.
who loathes and despises you, and will feel comfortable berating grandma at Thanksgiving dinner because she doesn't know how to pronounce the pronoun XIR.
Yes. I think I figured it out. I have a theory.
Okay.
GI Bill. That's a good point. People came back from World War II.
Yeah.
And they were high school graduates, no degrees, and they raised families.
Yes.
So then you have the kids of the greatest generation. Was it the boomers? Were the kids?
Yeah, that was the boomers. Yeah, the
So
baby boomers was the world after World War II.
So the boomers, they are growing up in this world where they were raised by a high school graduate.
Yeah.
They're not told to go to college.
Right.
Because you can raise a family with a high school degree.
Yeah.
A bunch of these kids become managers and become mid-level managers,
Sure.
and they run stores and businesses, and they're making okay money.
Yeah.
But then they look at their siblings. They're making six figures, and this is back in the the 80s. Like,
Yeah.
how are they making so much money? They went to college.
Right.
I should have gone to college.
Yes.
Then they tell their kids, you have to go to college.
Yes.
Because your uncle did, and look how much money he made.
Yes.
But they're missing something.
And just one more thing. And he looks down on us, and I get why he does.
They're missing something,
What?
though. If you were never told you had to go to college, and you chose to go to college, you made a decision for yourself, and you were pursuing your passion.
Sure.
It wasn't college that made them wealthy. It was their own passion and drive. And college was just them saying, what's the next step in becoming an architect or whatever. Now they've told all these kids, to succeed, you must go to college. And those kids don't care and don't know. And they take out massive loans.
Yeah.
And they go to school and say, oh. And then the guys, the school says, well, we recommend, I guess, I don't know, you want to be a journalist? I don't know. Well, put them in journalism. There you go. Congratulations.
If the public education system worked as planned, you wouldn't need to go to college because that high school diploma would be proof, not just evidence, proof to most companies that this guy or girl can do a great job on day one, that they are skilled, and this is a certificate that has meaning. The fact that a high school graduate is absolutely meaningless in our day and age, including possibly being illiterate, is now like, okay, well, now this is the degree that counts. What they ignore, even if they had the best of interests, which I do not think for a second, is that this is another 4 years where this person is not an economic benefit to the culture. He or she's not working. They're students. They're net loss to the economy. So that's what, instead of going from 1 to 17 where they're not producers, now it's 1 to 21. 4 years in terms of an adult's working lifespan is a significant chunk of that change for them not to be in the job market. And this is an economic cost that they just pretend doesn't matter.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.